52% of the British citizens voted to leave the EU. It's my responsibility to say to people of France, but also the other people in Europe, you have to understand, you have to listen. It's too late for the British people, but it's not too late for us. What is at stake in Northern Ireland and Ireland is not about trade or goods or technical issue, it's about peace. And we found a solution with Boris Johnson, not against him or not without him. Now my wish is just to say, be careful. If you speak about the shortage, there is not a single reason. COVID, raw material shortage everywhere, the price of energy also. It's the same problem for all the countries. But there is, in addition of these problems, the consequence of the Brexit, obviously.
Mr. Barnier was the chief Brexit negotiator for the European Union between 2016 and 2020. He is now running for President of France, seeking the nomination of the centre-right Republican Party. He has served as a member of both houses of the French Parliament, a European Commissioner and a French Minister. His account of running the Brexit negotiations, My Secret Brexit Diary, is published by Polity Press. Mr. Barnier, thank you very much for being here this morning.
Good morning.
We'll get on to your presidential campaign, but first I'd like to ask you about your book, which is an account of your time negotiating for the EU with the UK. You title the introduction to your book, A Warning. Why was the Brexit vote a warning to France and to the EU?
For such a country, a great country like UK, leaving the EU, the first time, leaving the single market, leaving the customs union is not a small event. It's a very historical and very serious event. And so for the EU, it's clearly a failure. The Brexit is a divorce. As any divorce, it still has many consequences in many fields and for so many people. But at the political level, we need to draw the lessons of this event. Why 52% of the British citizens voted against Brussels, against EU, to leave the EU? I think it's my responsibility, as I wrote in the first chapter, a warning to say to the people of France, but also the other people in Europe, you have to understand, you have to listen, and we will have to answer to this question asked by the British people, because it's too late for the British people, but it's not too late for us.
You mused that British voters who chose to leave the EU were doing so for similar reasons to French voters who go for Marine Le Pen or for Jean-Luc Mélenchon. What would be the consequences of ignoring these voters?
Precisely, I don't want we continue to ignore this, what I call the popular feeling, the popular sentiment, the social anger expressed by the British people in some regions against the lack of public services, against the lack of industry or jobs, of no future. Once again, we have to understand, to listen, and to answer. All the answers are not in Brussels, to be frank. A part of the answer are in Brussels. And we have begun to draw the lesson and to change what must be changed. But a part of the lessons are also, the answer are in Paris or in Berlin or in Rome. And a part of the answer are also at the regional or local level as far as the transportation and the social services are concerned. So we have everywhere to draw the lesson. Why these British people vote against Brussels? I think there are obviously domestic and more British reasons, but there are also common reasons in many regions of Europe. And so it is my point, and I'm decided to draw the lesson for France.
How are you listening to these voters? What would you, as President of France, change and make sure that these voters are not ignored anymore?
What concerns me is what the French people think today, and also I listen everywhere, the popular feeling, but 3 points in my country. Clearly, the lack of jobs in some regions. We have to bring back a future everywhere in what we call in France the territories, the regions, the departments, and to have a new industrial ambition. In France, as in England, we have abandoned part of our industry. Germany, Italy, Sweden did not do the same. So we have to rebuild this industrial ambition. We have to be careful about the public services, transport and social care, and we have to put in place a more efficient policy for migrations. So these are the 3 key points where we need to draw some lessons of the Brexit and to change what needs to be changed in Brussels, also in Paris.
One of the key themes through your book is the difficulty of negotiating around Northern Ireland and the tensions between the UK and the EU over how to maintain an open border and the integrity of the single market and so on. It's now almost a year since the Brexit that you negotiated took effect. In that time, we've seen continued tensions between the UK and EU, in particular over the Northern Ireland Protocol. Some British politicians are calling for the protocol to be changed or to be abandoned. How do you respond to that?
It was clearly the most difficult issue in this negotiation, because what is at stake in Northern Ireland and Ireland is not about trade or goods or technical issue. It's about peace. For the people, for the men and the women in Ireland, the key point is the peace, how to maintain this peace, which is fragile since 20 years and since the signature of the Good Friday Belfast Agreement. So I put this issue in the very first front line of the negotiation from the day 1 to the last day. And we worked a lot with Theresa May first, and after with Boris Johnson and his team to find a solution. And we found a solution, which is, I know, complex, sensitive, difficult. But because the situation is complex, sensitive, and difficult. And we found a solution with Boris Johnson, not against him or not without him. He knew clearly what he signed at that time. And after this negotiation with Boris Johnson, the House of Commons ratified this treaty. So there is no surprise. And now my wish is just to say, be careful. Be careful. We have to implement this protocol. We can find solution, operational solution, answer, technical solutions. I know that the Vice President of the Commission, Maroš Šefčovič, is a wise man, is competent, is working to find these solutions. But on the other side, we need the UK government respect its signature. It's a question of credibility and responsibility. And so everybody has to be careful. Everybody is looking what could happen in Ireland, in Dublin, in Belfast, in London, in Brussels, in Paris, in Washington too. So this situation is very serious, and I hope sincerely that everybody will be in good faith, able to respect what has been negotiated and signed.
Have you seen the UK act in good faith over the past year?
I just want to say I hope everybody will continue to work in good faith.
Let's get on to your presidential run. You're probably better known in Britain than you are on the continent, or at least were for a long time, because you regularly made headlines here in a way that you didn't in the EU. So why did you decide to make the shift from European to French politics, or back to French politics?
I don't know if I'm more popular in England than in France, but I'm not running in England.
More well known, not necessarily more popular.
Well known. I don't know if it's true, but I'm not running in England. I'm running in my country. I've always been a French politician elected by the people. And I just want to say, because I don't want to speak about the French campaign here in London, I want to respect the tradition, which is important for me, not to critique and not to make any comment about the French politics out abroad. But I just want to say that I just want to be useful to my country. It is the mission of a politician to be useful. Huh?
Well, nonetheless, I think many people in the UK would be interested to know why you've made this shift and how your ideas have changed and how they influenced you as a negotiator.
I've been involved in politics for a long time, at the regional level, 4 times in the French government, 2 times as commissioner, and finally as a European negotiator for the Brexit. And the people around me, my friends, many elected people, many citizens, think that this experience, capacity to put the people together, to work together, respecting everybody, and to succeed together can be useful to my country. This is just the only reason. Huh?
Christian Jacob, the head of the Republican Party, has said that Elysée, who is viewed as close to declaring his candidacy for president, is neither racist nor far-right. Should Zemmour be permitted to seek the nomination of the Republican Party? Are his politics compatible with your party's?
No way. No way. I have nothing to do with Zemmour. Huh? We have not the same feeling, we have not the same conviction, we have not the same history. This is my answer.
Should he be permitted to run for the nomination of the Republican Party?
Just answer to your question, no way.
No. And you've pledged to abide by the results.
But my point is not, frankly speaking, I don't want to speak about the French politics here. But the point is not to answer or to comment or to lose time speaking about the others. My point as a French politician running for the French presidency is to look at the problem, the concerns, the hopes of the people of my country and to address these problems and to address these concerns, not speaking about the others. Huh?
You argue throughout your book that the challenges of the 21st century, such as terrorism and climate change, cannot be addressed by individual countries. And this is a theme that runs throughout your book, and you talk about how countries are stronger as they pull their sovereignty, as they pull their powers. You have called for a rebalancing of powers between the national and European levels. How should Europe change, in your view? And should this be done via some unilateral actions, which you've proposed, or via changes to the way Europe functions and the structures of Europe?
Just let me make 2 or 3 points. Number one, I'm not a federalist. I'm a Gaullist and European. And for me, the European project is about pooling the nations of Europe, pooling, not merging, respecting the people, their traditions, their culture, their languages. It's the reason why this project is so difficult, because pooling means that we have to respect the national identities. But we succeed to build this project for the 60 last years, including with a great contribution of the UK. Number 2, it's a reality that to face successfully the big challenge in the world, we need to be together, just to have the correct weight in the world, to be respected by the China or the United States. I remember a few years ago a publication of Mr. Cameron, your former Prime Minister, supporting what I did at that time as a European Commissioner for the Single Market. And in this document, I remember a slide with the top 10 in the world, the economic top 10, every 10 years. Today, or 10 years ago, there were still in this top 10 4 European countries: Germany, UK, France, and Italy. And every 10 years, until 2050, One of the four is excluded of the slide, including UK. And at the end, 2050, only Germany remain as the number 10, number 10 or number 9. I don't want my country be excluded of the slide. I don't want my country excluded of the table. I don't want my country to be a spectator of its own destiny. If we want to be actor, if we want to be at the table, we need to be together, supported by single market, which is the main reason why the President Biden or the Chinese president respect us. It's clearly the single market as an ecosystem at the level of the continent of Europe. So this is the reason of the title of this book, Diary, but also The Great Illusion. If we have to be realistic and tell the truth, we need to be together, to be at the table with China, Russia, the States, India, and the others.
In kind of generalities about the need for Europe to change here and elsewhere, but what specifically would you change? How would you change Europe?
Well, 2 or 3 points linked to what I call the lesson of Brexit. For instance, less naivety in our trade relations, and the key point is reciprocity in our trade relations. Number 2, we need to know, speaking about industry or the strategic sector, who is buying what in Europe. Number 3, we need to invest together, as we did through the new fund created linked to the COVID crisis. For the first time, we have decided to invest in common 7.5 billion to invest in the future of Europe, to invest in the key strategic sectors, to invest against the climate change. These are the right change. And also, last point for me is to build a common migration policy. So this is the 4 key points where we have to act together, and at the right level to act.
What is not working about migration policy in the European Union at the moment?
Because we have not yet the same national policies for asylum, for the visas, and we have not yet the right implementation of the control for the borders, the external borders, which are our common borders. That means that Jean-Claude Juncker was right when he proposed, and it is just now to be implemented, a common force, 10,000 border guards at the European level to help each and every country to control its border, which are at the same time our border.
So are you proposing a common European migration policy, or should this be done at the member state level?
The migration policy is a shared policy between Europe. It doesn't work, and the national level, which doesn't work. So we have to improve the 2 levels together.
There's been an illustration of France being not being able to take full responsibility for its own fate in the past few weeks, with, in particular, issues like the US withdrawal from Afghanistan and the Aukus treaty between the UK, Australia and the US, which saw France marginalised, and the contract of the century lost. How do you respond to these events? Do they show a need for greater autonomy in European defence? And if they do, should that come at the European level or should it come at the national level?
I think for a long time that what the Europeans does not do for themselves, it's difficult to imagine that somebody else will do at their place. And what happened in Afghanistan, where the US, in a very unilateral manner, decided to withdraw. Just recall and remember that France has withdrawn itself from Afghanistan nine years ago. I don't want to give lessons. I just speak about the manner, the behavior. And it was clearly a very unilateral behavior. Understood like that, including in UK, if I'm not wrong. the fact that this historical contract in Australia has been cancelled in such a manner is another point. But also serious. I don't want to come back on this, the condition of these contracts and perhaps some mistake on the French side. I just want to say that an alliance needs trust, needs confidence. And it wasn't the case in that story. And more than that, I think that alliance does not mean allegiance. So you have always to think about in politics that the future does not be sacrificed, must not be sacrificed to the present. So I just recommend to the UK and also to the US, who are our allies, to be careful and to take into account the necessity for us to work together in the future, in the medium and long term. And to work together efficiently in medium and long term, we need trust between us. And this trust has been fragilized.
Do you think it's still there? Is there still the ability to trust the US?
We have to rebuild the trust.
The SPD's Olaf Scholz is likely to be the next German Chancellor. You've spoken of your desire to rebalance relations between France and Germany at the European level. How would you work with Germany as President of France?
If you come in my office, you will see on the wall a picture, a photograph, which is very important for me. It is the shake hand between de Gaulle and Adenauer, 1963, the Treaty of Elysée. And I became Gaullist and European at the same time because of this photograph, because of this shake hand between these two giants of the European policy, the Chancellor of Germany and the French President at that time. So I think since this time that the Franco-German cooperation is a necessity. And it is clearly the line of each and every French president since de Gaulle in 1958, the beginning of the European project. The European project has this foundation of the Franco-German reconciliation plus the 4 other countries working together at the very beginning. So I think this cooperation is a necessity, but more and more necessary, less and less sufficient. There is many other countries. I think for a long time that each and every country in the EU has its own added value. There are many other great countries, Spain, Italy, Poland, and once again, each country, even the smallest, have added value, have an history, have a culture, have a situation which can be useful for the others. Everyone for all. That is my line for Europe, everyone for all.
One last question. As you were walking around London, you may have seen queues at petrol stations. There is currently a fuel shortage in the UK, ascribed to a labour shortage in part because of the end of freedom of movement. Is this a consequence of the path that the UK chose to take in its negotiations with you?
It's not a consequence of the negotiation, it's the consequence of the Brexit. The Brexit have, and I always say that in the same terms for 4 years in each and every press conference in Brussels or in London, mechanical consequences. Leaving the single market has huge and many, many consequences at a human, social, economic, financial, technical, legal level. And one of the consequences, mechanical consequences, leaving the single market is to end the freedom of movement and to rebuild non-tariff barriers between us. This is the consequences of the choice for the UK to leave the EU. So, but if you speak about the shortage, I don't want to give lessons. There is many problems everywhere. We have many problems linked to the COVID crisis everywhere. No polemic on that point. We have many problems of raw materials everywhere. But in addition to this problem, you have the consequence of the Brexit. It's truth, and we have to tell the truth.
The fuel shortages that the UK is seeing were consequences of Brexit.
There is not a single reason. I just said COVID, raw material shortage everywhere, the price of energy also. It's the same problem for all the countries. But there is, in addition of these problems, the consequence of the Brexit, obviously.
Mr. Barnier, thank you for your time.
Thank you to you.